Welcome to How to Live Slow, the podcast where we discuss slow living for the modern woman and help you design an intentionally slower family life. I'm Rochelle Glendon, your personal slow living coach and host of this podcast. I know all about busy, but I love living slow. Enjoy the show. Well, hello and welcome to episode 60 of the podcast. It is so lovely to have you here and thank you so much for joining me. Today we're talking about redefining successful work-life balance. And my guest, very excitingly, is Kelly Thistlethwaite from the Yorkshire Yogi. Apologies, Kelly, for not quite getting my tongue around that last name. Yes, Kelly is from Yorkshire. She's the Yorkshire Yogi and she shares her journey through matrescence and living slower. She is an amazing woman. Her story is really fascinating and I loved my chat with her. So apart from hearing her story, she also shares with us, the factors that keep at play. There's a really important reason why women as mothers wear a lot of different hats and we play a lot of different roles and we have a lot on our plate, varying influences on our lives. And we often beat ourselves up when we inevitably fail at the impossible task of being everything to everyone. But there is a reason why this is the case and why this is hard. And it's not to do with us, it's an external reason. So Kelly is going to share that with us. I hope you enjoy the episode. Now, as well, you may have known if you listened to episode 58 where I made the announcement that now that it's winter, the podcast is going fortnightly. We're going into hibernation mode for winter, and that's for a few reasons. First of all, I need to take a little bit of a break. I want to practice what I preach and step back a little bit, create a little bit more time in my life. The episodes each week take me quite a few hours. It's, 4 or 5 hours per episode sometimes or often. So I'm just scaling that back so that I can go on holidays and, I don't want to commit to doing a weekly podcast and then not be able to. So pre-warning you that it's going to be fortnightly until at least the end of winter, and we may pick back up weekly after that. But I'm going to make it so that we have a guest one fortnight and then a solo episode from me one fortnight. So there's going to be three months in winter and 3 really powerful episodes from me on some really key points about slow living. So that's going to be really fun. So I'm going to bring a lot of value to each episode for that reason. It'll also give you some time to catch up on episodes that you may not have heard before. If you're a newer listener or if you've, skipped a couple, you can go back and I'll be sharing some of my favorite episodes over winter as a throwback thing on Instagram and on my email. If you're already subscribed to that, you'll start to see those very soon. Aside from that, I just wanted to say thank you so much for joining me today and I hope you enjoy the episode. So, hi Kelly, how are you? Thank you so much for joining me.
Hi, honey. Thank you so much for having me. I am excited. Yeah, excited to chat.
Yeah, I'm really excited to chat as well. So why don't we get started, as always, with just tell everybody a little bit about you and your journey or your story and Yorkshire Yogi as well.
Yeah. So I'm a Yorkshire lass, so I live in the UK in the north of England. Call it God's country, it's beautiful. What am I, 36? And before becoming a mama, I went to university. I've got a degree in sports rehab. And after studying that and gaining my degree, I worked in sports injury clinics and with sporting settings, football, rugby, quite a lot, being a northern lass, and very much was focused on and really passionate about the human body, how we move, how we can move well, especially after sustaining injuries. I really loved the work, but quite a lot of it was in isolation all the time. And I wanted a change in scenery. I wanted to move away from where I was living up in Manchester, which is where I studied. And I applied for loads of jobs and I decided to go for one that was within the military rehab setting. I packed my car up for this journey, went down for my interview, absolutely fell in love with a place called Headley Court, which is the Centre of Excellence for rehabilitation within the military. It's actually moved location now, but when I worked there, it was down south near Leatherhead. And I worked there for 3 years. I got the job, properly packed my car up, drove down, and I worked there for 3 years. And whilst I was there, it was the best time of my career, really. I got to work with some truly amazing individuals who had suffered life-changing injuries. I met some amazing members of staff and was just really inspired in how amazing our bodies and our minds are when they work together. From there, I was asked to move back up north for the charity, to work for a charity called Help for Heroes. And I decided to say yes, and again packed the car up, drove back up north to Catterick, just outside Richmond in North Yorkshire, and I was there for 5 years. And I was a part of a team of people who really, our job was to provide sporting events, to provide programs to get wounded, injured and sick veterans and servicemen and women into something again, to really instill confidence, to really look at, okay, I'm mentally or physically, I have an injury in some way, what can I still do? And a big part of my role there was to walk alongside people, to train them physically. I was a swim coach and loved cycling and running and all sorts, and said yes to a lot of amazing challenges, which really, again, taught me just how amazing the power of intention is, power of believing in ourselves. And in recovery from injury, from trauma, and it was just another really insightful, wonderful experience to work with both the people that were injured and the staff members there. But after that 8 years, I found myself burnt out. I'm really empathetic and wasn't really aware of how to fully look after myself, protect myself, I guess, and really find that balance in my life. So I decided that I wanted to change careers slightly, my pace of life. And I thought, well, do you know what? If the general public will have gone through things in their own life, they'll be going through lots of different things and need these tools to help them feel well. Whilst I was at Help for Heroes, I went to America and studied yoga. I was there I got scholarship for an immersive month. And I also did a 10-day trauma sensitive yoga teacher training, and it was an adaptive yoga teacher training as well. And that completely changed my thoughts around yoga and meditation. And actually I realized just how much I needed it in my own life, that slowing down and connection to myself. And it was through those courses that I realized that I needed to slow down and do something a little bit different. So I started Yorkshire Yogi. I launched that. I got married. I met my husband, and we decided to move back to where I'm from in Huddersfield in West Yorkshire. And I did nothing for 3 months until I decided that, okay, let's start doing little bits. I started to offer yoga classes and coaching sessions online and in person as well, and we could do that. And then I decided I'll just open a studio. It's somewhere to work, can bring people together, and I love being with people. So let's do that. Let's open the studio. And that felt really lovely. I love being creative. I also launched a huge festival in my town, a yoga and wellbeing festival, which was incredible.
Amazing.
I really love, yeah. I really love creating things and bringing people together. Collaboration, community were big words and still are really for me. So I did all these things and knew that I wanted to start a family. I knew that my husband and I wanted children. We both decided that we did. And I launched my festival. That went really well, and opened my studio, and then found out I was pregnant. And to be honest, I couldn't believe it, because the stress of doing those two things, I couldn't believe that the human body was actually capable of, like, let's grow a human being as well. So I was delighted. And I'll never forget thinking in the months that followed that, where I was setting up my studio and really launching all the classes that we provided and workshops, thinking, okay, so I've got this time now until I have my baby. And when I have my baby, I'm sure not much will change. I'll just go back to what I did before. I'm sure that's how it works. I see people do it all the time. I imagine I'll have my baby and pop her into nursery like 4 or 5 months old. I'll just be running everything as I did. Yep, pretty sure that that's how it's all going to go. So, and I laugh because it would just, my experience was just so different to that when I had my little girl. And so I set my studio up, and I sort of, as much as I thought I could anyway, I prepared myself to go on a mat leave that I was really proud that I created for myself. And then I had my little girl, and just my whole world completely changed. My experience of becoming a mother was just so profound. And I really wasn't expecting it. And I know that might sound like, well, you're having a baby, it's going to change your life. But I don't think, and I speak for myself, I really truly understood how it would make me feel, how my priorities would change, the demands of being a mum, what my labour might have been like. And that was completely different to what I'd imagined as well, which Most of the time it probably is, isn't it? So yeah, just a huge change to my life. And it really caused me to, or thankfully, I had to sit down and go, okay, what's working for me and what isn't? I've very much always been driven and okay, let's achieve, let's do the next thing, let's do the next thing. And then becoming a mum, I just realized that actually I can do anything, but I can't do everything. And it's taken me a long time to say that and really, truly be okay with it. That actually, my realization now is that my power is in that, in being fierce about my priorities and valuing myself. And that's a little bit about about my background, really.
While the details of everyone's experience is probably, obviously slightly different, I think the essence of what you're saying is such a universal thing. We're women, especially when we have kids sort of in our late 20s and early 30s, we've talked about this a little bit before in the podcast, that you do all of the things and your time is your own. You work to the point of burnout because you've got no reason not to, and you want to achieve all these amazing things, and you have a baby and you think that that's just going to slot in with how things currently are. It might be a little bit extra. And so many of us are just completely culture shocked when that baby comes along. It's nothing really like what you anticipate it to be. And I don't think, even if someone does say to you, this is going to change your life, you can't hear it in the way that they mean it until you do it yourself.
No.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing that. I think that would definitely help people understand this whole experience. So let's talk about that as well then. So we've got our two kind of main roles. We're a woman and we're a mother. And how do you define being successful in those two roles?
Such a great question, and answering it now is completely different to what I thought I had to be when I first became a mum, my definitions of the two. Because actually when I first became a mum, I literally couldn't see how I could do both. I just thought, I don't know how people return to work. Like, how do you do it all? And I then realized that, and it's through my Mama Rising training hugely, that that's completely changed my life, that actually these cultural and social norms and my even subconscious expectations of myself were damaging, were really not true, and were ideals I was living up to in my mind and failing daily, but I didn't have to. So my perception was, well, I have to be everything for this little baby now, for my little girl. I have to give all of my time to her. I have to it's this perfectionism. And I'd not really been like that before, I don't think. And then I've had my little girl, and you look at this little vulnerable, beautiful, precious baby and think, wow, I have to do absolutely everything perfectly for this baby. I can't mess it up. So yeah, I think my definition before as well of a successful woman, I thought I had to do everything I did before. I thought I had to give 110%. And because I didn't have the time or energy, especially when my little girl was young, and she's not even 2, so I'm still in the thick of everything, aren't I? But I just thought, I just can't do it. I ended up closing my studio when she was 5 months old because I was still trying to, from afar, but had to make decisions for my studio, had to still switch on my work head, and I just couldn't do it. I know lots of women do, and just, a huge respect for women that do what is right for them. And I just know that when my little girl was that young, I just couldn't do it all. So to be honest, for a long time, my definition of being a good, successful woman, I didn't know what that was. I didn't know who she was anymore. I didn't know who that part of me was. And it's not until my little girl started nursery, which due to the pandemic, she was 16 or 17 months old, actually. That was pushed back. I can now see that I get to define that. I've had the space and time to process, and through my training as well, and realizing that I get to define that. So now it's doing less, but doing what I do from the heart and making it matter, and just being, again, like I said, really fierce with what I say yes to, and being, I guess, protective of my time and energy, and saying no to the things that just won't work, and trusting in it all. Everything I've learned through motherhood, to be honest, to go with the flow a little bit more, to really trust in my intuition, to be so much kinder to myself. So yeah, bringing those feminine attributes that I now know to value fiercely throughout whilst being a mother, actually bringing that into my work as well. So yeah, and I love all the work with Sophie Brock and, you know, Donald Wincott, basically saying, you know, we don't have to do all these things. That was so insightful, learning about these people that are researching motherhood studies and helping mums be happy in this modern world, you know, helping us give ourselves permission and empowering us actually to mother in a way that feels good for us and to be the woman that we want to be as well alongside that.
Something that you said at the start about perfectionism. Now, so many of our, you know, air quote, negative things, negative feelings or negative traits, we misinterpret them. Like, as in, perfection is something to, you know, if we're being perfectionists, it's not a good thing. But motherhood does call you to, like you said, you were trying to do it perfectly because you just loved that baby just so much. And I think that's a really important thing to highlight there, that a lot of our perfectionist tendencies they come from love. They come from trying to do a good job and prove or show our babies how much we love them. And I think you can take away some of the pressure of that and just know that your job, what you're trying to do, is show love, and there are so many ways to do that are also kind to yourself as well. So yeah, I just wanted to highlight that because I hadn't actually even thought of it like that myself. I mean, those priorities really do shift, don't they, instantly. And you know, they talk about like looking at your baby and fall instantly in love, but I think it's probably more of a shifting of priorities. Yeah. And you said about like not actually understanding what your idea of a successful woman is. And that's where we're talking about the inner split, is the successful woman and our good mother or being a mother. So there's those two roles, and not having an identity or an idea of what the successful woman is until after you become a mother, and looking back and realizing what it was. And it was being available, right, and performing as per the social norms at work. And it's that splitting priority that stops us from being able to do that. And it's that return to something other than that robotic kind of way of being. So work-life balance, it's about that, like balancing those two identities. And what are some other factors, before we go on with how to fix this, what are some other factors at play that keep us out of balance, do you think?
I'd say it's the pressure, you know, that we put on ourselves to do all the things all the time and do them really well. If that's something you can relate to, it definitely was me. Managing our time. And when I say managing it, it's totally different to before, and it's that kind of, and it changes, doesn't it, throughout motherhood. So that first year is, you know, your little ones are so dependent on you, and I think for me it was a real surrendering in that time of, okay, this is what my role is now. Looking back, my little girl's nearly 2, I can see that, you know, that it's like that for that time, and then it changes and it shifts, and it will continue to change and shift. But I know for me in that period, I remember thinking, wow, especially when she was about 3 or 4 months old, I was so sleep deprived, so just a hot mess most of the time. There was no bouncing back, there was no there was no lifting your head above the parapet to say, oh, okay, yeah, no, that's the way. Just so in the thick of it, and balance that didn't exist for me in terms of this inner split and the successful woman. But I can see now that the trust in the process really, really does help. So yeah, maybe things that keep us out of balance are the fact that we're so fully immersed.
Like you said, with the inner split, it's like we almost abandon our identity as a woman and we fully embrace or fall into that mothering transformation. We become mothers. And we even sometimes don't know each other by our own names. We refer to each other as so-and-so's mum.
Yes.
And suddenly, you know, at some point that starts to shift again. But that is, so it's that, I love that idea that, you know, bringing that mothering feminine energy into our life and like immersing into it rather than trying to find a way back to the masculine, just like going into it. We've talked before about this idea, and it's like that feminine energy. How do we bring that then with us as we go back to identifying into those two roles as mother and woman, you know, so bringing those new skills with us into our work life rather than trying to maintain that split?
I think it's really important, you know, to value to value everything that we bring to our role as mothers, those feminine qualities. I think that's the key. I think that's been the biggest thing for me, to trust that those qualities are transferable and so important, they're so valuable, and that they really matter, actually. And I think that was a big thing that I struggled with when I became a mum. You know, I didn't value all of everything I was doing. I'd get to the end of the day and think, oh my God, what have I done today? I've not achieved anything. When actually all the invisible work, the things that you can't tick off the job list, really valuing the nurturing quality, the ability to listen to intuition, the kindness, the compassion, the holding space, all of those qualities, really, the feeling of it all, the depth of what's behind the jobs that we do. That's been the biggest thing for me. I think the biggest thing motherhood's taught me is to value, just to truly value who I am as a woman and a mother. And I know you mentioned there just before this question about being able to bring, when we become a mother, you know, we're sort of really in mum mode. And then it's that whole like, right, let's return back to work now then. Our child's whatever age, we've decided to do that. Okay, let's go sit in the same chair that we did before or do the same role. And we're completely different, because motherhood changes the whole of us, and where we are, who we are anywhere is who we are everywhere, or at least to live truly. You know, I think some people can flip on a different hat and they're like, okay, yeah, I am this person now, but yeah, I don't see them as fully separate, actually. And that was a massive journey for me, you know, trying to do my work and doing mothering and couldn't do it, and then close my studio and said, okay, I go back to work and that's going to look like whatever it's going to look like later, and went straight, like, fully into motherhood for what felt like quite a long time. The pandemic started, and that just intensified that experience of mothering alone for a longer time. And it wasn't until I realized that actually I can bring some of those qualities of who I was before, the woman, into my mothering. I can bring some of my mothering into the woman that I am in whatever work I do and into my life. And I just think that accepting of the fact that actually we're the same person everywhere, and it's not valued in society, really, you know. I don't think it is, and that needs to really change. And it starts with us changing, you know. It starts with me valuing myself more, so that I can show my daughter how to value herself, how to value this role that we play, and how actually sometimes it's okay to say, actually, mummy needs some time now, mummy needs to give back to herself now. And I think it's that change in mindset, that's been the biggest thing. It's been the biggest difference to me, enjoying my motherhood journey more, enjoying the time that I'm with my little girl, enjoying the time that I'm not with her, the giving myself permission and knowing the value of needing to fulfill these different roles that I play.
It'd be interesting to see, like, I wonder if we had our babies younger, how our careers would have been different. Like your job, how would you have shown up differently in therapy situations with clients from traumatic injuries and that sort of thing? Whether that sort of transformation, if you do go on the journey of motherhood, that transformation that you undergo yourself, then it is a transformation. So you become a new person, and how does that influence the roles that you play outside of that and ongoing, and what the future possibly looks like? It's interesting and so fascinating.
And that's why there's so much wisdom in community, isn't there? You know, like when I worked in those places, we had men and women. We had women that were in their 20s like me. We had women that were mothers. And there's a place for absolutely everyone, isn't there, to share their wisdom, to share their outlook on life, to learn from, really. So I would have turned up completely different.
Let's talk about the fact that we're in a global pandemic. I know I'm here in Australia where we aren't in lockdown at the moment, but you are in lockdown. How has that, or lockdown, I'm not sure what the terminology, what you guys call it, what you call it in the UK, if it's lockdown or isolation, there's been so many words. How has that impacting you? How are you going? And how's that impacting your motherhood experience at the moment?
Oh, it's gone on for so long. We do call it lockdown, hon. So I would say that it has been this roller coaster of emotions, and it's not just, we've gone through lockdown 1, lockdown 2, lockdown 3, and the biggest thing, to be honest, I've been upset. I've really struggled. I've had days where they've felt like those initial days in motherhood that felt like about a week in a day, you know, worried about my little girl. Like I'm literally everything to her at the moment. Am I good enough? Is she going to be stimulated enough? That was the first lockdown for me. The second one, I really eased into it a lot more. And during the second one as well, for me, a word that I would use is healing. Having to slow down, which in all its challenges, actually, I think has been, I would say for me, it's been it's been a huge gift, actually, because I stopped comparing myself a lot to well, I should be ready to leave my little girl now and go away for a night, or I should be doing X, Y, and Z, and I should be at these social things, and I should be wherever in my career. And actually, it gave me permission to slow down. Everyone else is slowing down. And also, it gave me a chance to sign up to the training that I did with Mama Rising and learn about matrescence. And it actually, through doing that training, made me realize what parts of my motherhood journey were becoming a mother, and actually what parts of it were birth trauma. So I've been on a huge journey throughout the last year of realizing actually I did experience birth trauma, and I had triggers that I can really see now were really challenging. So it's given me an opportunity to learn so much about myself. Been days that I've found it really hard, because with anything with any change, with any self-development, with any kind of therapy, things get kicked up and we're in the arena, as Brené Brown would say, and we have to be brave and courageous and learn so much about ourselves. But it's been incredible, actually, to give myself that time to heal, and my mothering is better for it. I'm happier, I do a lot more for myself, and the biggest thing that's changed, because I've always done bits for myself, but is my perception of not feeling guilty about it, and actually this is really important. So lockdown has been healing. I've learned a lot, and I just feel like I'm coming out of the other end of lockdown, whenever it ends. I mean, hopefully it's soon. We've got a bit of a roadmap now in the UK. Just a completely different mother to when I entered, and that's really special, actually. I'm really grateful for that. I'm grateful for the time, actually, the learning that I've had, and the support that I've had, and the courage, actually, that I've had to realize that. And I think a lot needs to change around the perception of trauma and normalizing it as well, because that massively fed into my experience of motherhood, my idea of the good mother and perfectionism.
So many of us sort of feel like we wish that we had the time back with our kids, because we didn't slow down and we didn't take the opportunity when they were little. And what a gift in a lot of ways. I mean, there's been some issues with women and having been impacted, economically more than men from the pandemic. But what a beautiful gift to have that extra time with your kids as well. So that's a positive, I suppose. So thank you. But I'm interested to know, when you say trauma, that's the emotional trauma and physical trauma, and trauma is a bit of a buzzword at the moment. So I'd love to, if you've got some time, just to maybe explore that a little bit more, and particularly the physical trauma, because I know that's where your experience lies in your work previously. So can you just tell us a little bit about that and how that impacts things, what it looks like?
So from my experience, it's funny, because I look back now and I think, wow, my work has always been helping people, like walking alongside people who have been through something physically or mentally traumatic. And actually, after having my little girl, my definition of trauma was quite extreme from the line of work that I did before. So I didn't realize that my own experience of feeling fearful, out of control, this experience over 3.5, 4 days with the long labor, and what was actually trauma, and my triggers were a traumatic response to that experience. I thought I would have had to have been through something much worse, much more catastrophic, much more life-changing. Actually, trauma is really individual, and I know for me, the biggest things for me were not really having these subconscious expectations of what a birthing experience would be like, and coming out the other side just completely unprepared. And I know you can't be fully prepared for that emotional and physical change within your body. I had a really long latent phase of labour. I was in and then I was back out, and I'd not dilated, and I came back home, and then I was in the pool, and then we had to move because my little baby was her head was tilted and swelling, and then we sat upstairs for 9 hours. I had an epidural, I was on a drip, and after 9 hours, the last thing to have of this cascade of intervention was an emergency C-section. And I can I can remember lying on the table having my C-section and just thinking, I don't want this. I can't believe this is happening. Like, I mean, it took a while. It was 3.5 days, but it felt like it happened quite quickly. And sitting there thinking, how did I get here? And hearing my little girl cry and they'd taken her off. And I can now see that one of my biggest triggers was my little girl crying, which is really unfortunate because children cry a lot.
Yes.
And I can see now when she was really little just how much distress it brought me. And I now know why. But I just think you have a baby and, you know, you hit the ground running. There's no time, especially if you've been through surgery, you know, huge surgery, if you've had a C-section planned or not. And you don't have that recovery time. You're straight into being a mother, you know, trying to figure out if you're breastfeeding or not, or just, you know, just how to be a mother. And I just wasn't prepared for that emotional and physical reality, actually. And I just remember thinking, wow, you know, who am I now? I'd always been so fit, and anything I set my mind on, I'd achieve it physically. So I was like, I'm going to absolutely boss birth. I'm going to go in there. I'm a yoga teacher. I'm going to breathe this baby out. I've done hypnobirthing. I am ready. And I got out and was like, I can't even wiggle up the bed. Like, you know, I'm in so much pain. And
yeah,
I failed. That was my biggest sentence. I failed. I couldn't even birth my baby in a way that I wanted to. And, you know, these are sentences I would never say to any other woman. I would say to her, your baby is here. You did an amazing job. You still birthed your baby.
Yeah.
And I could see this and I couldn't quite feel it for such a long time. And it took me a long time to recover physically and emotionally. And I'm still processing things, definitely. I think I always will be, because the demands of motherhood never stop demanding. And there's always little bits of processing to do, I think. But my triggers are nowhere near as heightened. And I think this is why in lockdown, as you do, I launched my business with a really good friend of mine to help women navigate that pre and postnatal journey physically, because I've done sports rehab. I write exercise programs for people to help them to gain mobility and strength post injury or surgery. But I needed someone to do it for me, actually. And I was searching the internet and I just couldn't find a lot of things online that were really considerate of C-section recovery. And it would frustrate me that they'd say, hold the plank or whatever. And I'd be like, I can't do that anymore. I can't do that anymore. I used to be able to. I used to be And it wasn't until I really started to be more mindful about my thoughts and the words I said to myself and all the training that I've done that I could really see that, wow, I found that so hard, actually, that whole recovery physically and emotionally. And that's why I'm passionate now to continue to help myself, but women like me that were in the thick of motherhood and completely lost their identity, completely unsure of, well, who am I now? And what do I like physically? Like, how do I get from where I am now, shuffling and being in pain, to back to running, back to walking, back to being able to lift my baby up and down without it really being painful, and just to reassure them that it really does get easier, and the kinder we are to ourselves. I know it sounds so cliche, like be kind to yourself, but it is so true. And just trusting in the healing process and what time can give you, but actually what space can give you as well. It wasn't until my little girl started nursery that I felt like I had time to realize all of this. Yeah,
Thank you for sharing that. I 100% relate and agree. It is so hard, the pressures that we are to have on us to bounce back, and all of that, with all of those horrible things, the pressure that we put on ourselves to perform in a certain way. And I found it really hard to find good quality information about how to heal my body. I didn't want to bounce back. I didn't want to get my abs back or whatever. I just wanted my body to not be in pain. And it took a long time to sort that out. I wanted to be able to stand up straight and not feel uncomfortable when I walked, and, you know, heal up my ab separation. And that, I mean, there is information when you know where to look and when you start digging, but it's not the first thing that comes. You've really got to be going a little bit almost alternative, which is really frustrating. So it is possible to heal that, but it is best to go slow and just take your time. Have you got any final words of wisdom for us before we say goodbye?
Yeah, I would say if anyone's listening and they can relate to anything no matter how far down the line they are from having their children, that it's always possible for us to redefine what success looks like, you know, to redefine what the good mother is, what that is for us, and to redefine the successful woman. But actually, more than that, just to reconnect with ourselves as women and, you know, take the pressure off. Don't feel guilty. Our children need us to be full and inspired and not just be, I think it's Sophie Brock that says, you know, we're not just vessels to contain other people, and actually we need to show our children that we can dream and go and get whatever it is that we want to, and just model that. Do it for ourselves, to be full for ourselves, but empower our children to do the same.
You mentioned a couple of books or resources, Sophie Brock being one. I'll leave some info in the show notes. But where can we find you online?
So Yorkshire Yogi is my business name. So I'm on Instagram and Facebook, and I've got my website. And then Fly Mama is my online platform that I set up with my beautiful friend during the second lockdown. So it stands for First Love Yourself Mama, and we empower women through movement and matrescence to grow. So through your pregnancy, to heal, rebuild and thrive. My friend is a women's health physiotherapist and Pilates instructor, shares all of her knowledge, you know, even things like C-section scar massage or general postpartum massage, to hormonal information, as well as looking at healing from separation, things like that. And then I share all my matrescence and my yoga knowledge and wisdom and meditation. So yeah, that's our Fly Mama platform. We're on Instagram and Facebook, and we're just in the process actually of creating a platform, an online platform and sort of website and stuff, but you can find links to Fly Mama from my website. So yeah, come and join us.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you for having me. It's been lovely.
Take care. That's it for another episode. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you'd like to connect further, the show notes from today's episode, including all the social links and free resources, are over on my website, howtoliveslow.com/podcast. Have a beautiful week ahead, and I'll speak with you again soon.